Okay, so I've muted everyone. It's just gone 12:30. Great to see you. We've currently got 74 on and more sneaking in as we speak. And we're recording this. So if you're not happy with it being recorded, just turn off your video and that'll be fine. I'm just letting a couple other people in as we speak. So thanks everybody for coming along. Obviously a bit of interest here. We're currently sitting at 80 or so. This is the last of the weekly forums that we've been running now for, goodness, was it 15 months or so? And next year we'll probably do something on big topics, maybe once a month or something. So people, if you've got things on big topics you would like discussed, let us know and we'll create a program of that. Before I start on the hybrid meetings, I'd particularly like to thank the team that was working on this. And I'll put this in alphabetical order. Philip Ross, Roger Diggins, Stuart Jebb and Tony Payne. Thanks very much for all the hard work in this. I'm going to share a screen. We're going to do a couple of things. We've got a presentation on some options and we've got this 5-6 minute video clip in the middle of that. For questions, we'll take them at the end or fire them in the chat. Use the chat box and we'll pick them up and the team will watch the chat box, see what's coming up in there. And Heather is aware, she's co-host this evening. So thank you for that. I'm going to share the screen and just go through this. So this is going to last around 20 minutes or so. So we've got plenty of time for questions and answers. So can we see that? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes? Yeah. I'll stop walking. Yep, that's fine. So as I say, thanks to everybody for the contributions to this. What we're going to do is just go through what we defined as a hybrid meeting. I've heard lots of different definitions, but we had to come to something. And also, why hold one unless there's purpose and benefits of it? So we'll cover that as well. If you remember, I think there were 70 plus clubs answered a little survey we sent out. So we're going to share the answers with that, which actually helped us shape what we were doing. And then we'll look at technical solutions. We'll look at a very simple one and a couple of more complex ones. Look at equipment options for you, and it can be as expensive or as cheap as you want. We'll think through some of the soft issues that go around all of that, on how to run the meetings, how to look after things. And we're going to discuss tutorial options on what could be going forward. And then a general discussion. So that should take us to just about, I'm going to be brave and say 10 to 5 to 7. So we've got plenty of time for questions and answers. So our definition was quite simply, it's a meeting with people face to face, but also people remote. And options for in-person or remote speakers. And the ability to share screens of people, the talk and the presentations, whether the people are talking or remote or if they're in the room. And as you can imagine, the number of permutations that suddenly arrived coming out of all of this became quite complex. So hopefully we've simplified this down for you. But the purpose and benefits, it's giving you a lot more flexibility for people. People are still going to be concerned about face-to-face as the pandemic eases and still not comfortable going to face-to-face meetings, or indeed, as I've heard, driving home in the dark in the winter. So again, there's something else that's in there. Options for inter-club meetings, and I've heard a lot of them. My own club has been working with one of the clubs way down southwest of Scotland. And I know Ian Dow's on the call tonight, and the number of fundraisers we've done online I've seen as bingo ones, and raising lots of money on that. But also sowing seeds of thought for future options. Because if we can do this, there must be other options that are coming up in that. And there's probably others. And if you can think of others, go and put them in the chat box and we'll pick them up from there. So I think there's lots of benefits to this, but the big purpose is we're able to meet and we can satisfy people who want to be face-to-face, but also for the people that are not comfortable face-to-face. And I personally think there's quite a bit to run on this. What did we find when we looked at the surveys? One of the things we were concerned was, what's the technology people were using? Now, 85% are using Zoom. A few are using Teams, Microsoft Teams, and some are using other technology, whether it was Skype or some of these other things like that. So that's why we focused on what we've been doing on Zoom. And the majority of the club sizes in the blue and the purple really is, it's at the 0 to 20, 21 to 40, you know. So that's, again, that's 80% of the size of clubs we're looking at, but we've not ignored the larger ones. And again, we'll come back onto that in the options there. Everybody wants all the different options, whether it's a business meeting, whether it's a speaker, whether other things, whether it's a fundraiser. So we had to cater for all things in there. And everybody seems very comfortable with screen share. I've seen some very good practices with screen share, and I've seen some not quite so good ones. Some people, less than a quarter, have used breakout rooms. And I know those that have used it at the beginning of meetings for larger clubs, I know Elgin particularly use it, where people can go and just have a 15-minute chat with some of their friends in 5 or 6, groups of 5 or 6. And not quite so many have used opinion polls, which is a great way of actually getting people to be involved in things. So again, we can cover that, but that's not going to be tonight. That's going to be a future thing. Other things we found out, half the rooms are very quiet, but some have got background noise, and 10 to 15% are very noisy. Now that's an issue, and really you need to think about where you're meeting if it's a very noisy background. A lot of people didn't know what their Wi-Fi speed is. And for a lot of what we're talking about, really we should be looking at Wi-Fi or a connection somewhere around 40 megabit. So those are in the slow, that's going to struggle. And I know that, you know, for example, when we were looking at the district conference and things, if it's on slow and we're playing videos, they do stutter and things like that. And again, 10–15% thought they'd fast Wi-Fi, which is great news. And for some reason, this is not moving on. Here we go. And so of the 70-odd clubs that answered, most have got a big screen projector and laptop, but not quite so many had a wireless hub or an in-room mic or an in-room amplifier. And that's something we'll come on to. So we realized what people were needing to look at when we were trying to recommend equipment for you. So some of the roles that we were looking at, obviously in the middle, the chair sets the agenda, the chair runs the meeting, the chair seeks input from participants, make sure everyone's involved. Whereas the host really sits in the background and sets up the meeting in Zoom, starts the meeting, shares the netiquette, like we're muting you, we're recording, and manages anything shared on the screen. And we do recommend in larger meetings that there's a co-host at the bottom, or facilitator, who supports the host, controls the spotlight feature. So those that were on, for example, the district conference will have seen that we were actually spotlighting the speakers, so they came up on everybody's screen so they could find them rather than try and troll through. I think we were at 136 at the district conference. And they can also watch the chat and encourages use of the chat. Host and chair, essential. Co-host, more important meetings, and if we're needing to manage larger amounts of work. The district conference, for example, was quite intensive background work, looking at all the videos and everything that we had to share. So, simple option. People sitting around a table, half a dozen people, laptop with a camera, Wi-Fi connection, and they can host the meeting, they can spotlight presenters, they can mute and unmute participants, and they can manage chat. Really simple solution. For small groups, sitting around a table, the laptop's got a camera, and that could be a local presenter, or it can manage remote presenters, much as we're doing tonight in some shape or form. I'm going to play a short video clip now, so I'll just come out of this. This portion of the workshop included a video, which is unfortunately no longer available. For an introduction to hybrid meetings, we're going to give you a link just after this. And our thanks go to Marcus Seppala for allowing us to include this link to his video. So enjoy that. Really clear, except we covered that quite quickly. So let's just take you through some of that, and I'll share my screen again. So I think this is where we were. Can people see that okay? Somebody hold up their thumb, Alistair Walker?
That's fine.
Yep, good. So what we had was a simple one and a medium meeting option, much like Philip was telling us there. We added on a room view camera, which could be an iPhone. It doesn't need to be connected anywhere. It just needs to be charged and have obviously the link for the Zoom meeting, which you'll have anyway. Add on a room microphone of some kind, and we'll recommend some things for you just in a minute. Add on a Bluetooth speaker or a wired speaker if you want. Bluetooth's easier, it's no connections. And that's the host or the co-host working on that. And if you've got a remote presenter, or they could be in room or remote, they could have their own laptop and they could present away, and they could be logged into the meeting as well, either in the same room or remotely. It doesn't make any difference. So there's an option for a medium-sized meeting. The room mic needs to be able to pick up everybody in the room so that remote people can be heard. And if we went then to a larger meeting, same thing again, the host meeting, but we need to add on things. So we need a co-host this time. And the co-host is going to look at the speaker slides, the video screen share, the Zoom gallery to the projector, spotlight presenters. And you could even have, I think in the district conference, we had three co-hosts because of the workload. But we also had 130 people, and we had, I think it was 12 different speakers, and therefore 12 different presentations. So the presentation would sit in that second laptop. You'd have the projector or a big screen or a TV connected to it. Now here's the more interesting thing. To manage the sound, you would need a sound mixer and a couple of microphones, one for the speaker, one for the room, or it could be multiple microphones, and then connect into loudspeakers. And that could be computer loudspeakers, or it could connect into your venue's sound system if the venue's got a sound system. So theirs seems much more complex, but it's actually not that difficult to put together. So moving on from that, we need to be able to get the sound not just from the mixer to the laptop. We need it going both ways so that people in both outside the room and inside the room can hear everything. And the room view camera, which could be your iPhone or a smartphone of some kind. So some of the equipment options we looked at, a smartphone clamp for your phone or a mini tripod, there's 20, 15 quid. Microphone stand and an omnidirectional microphone, as Philip was showing, £14. So we're not talking of expensive equipment. Or a camera tripod, bigger one, or a Bluetooth speaker for £59. So really it's up to you what you need in your meeting as to which equipment you need. Now, somebody challenged me that said the whole lot needs to be under 200, and we've easily done that. If you wanted to go bigger, the audio mixer at the top, it's £54. And a decent speaker room microphone, that starts getting much more expensive, but it picks up the audio from everybody in the room and also works as a speaker, and that's 170. So really it depends on how you manage that. But that could just as easily be connected into your venue's loudspeaker system. And if you really want to go mad and have a mirrorless DSLR, you can spend a lot of money on getting very high quality video, like 4K video. Do you really need that? I don't know. That is up to you. I would say that's not really needed for most things. And then that's the equipment, but what about the guides for hosting some of these meetings? So we've actually produced 4 guides about the logistics, about the meeting structure, about anticipating and adapting to challenges, and some of the best practices. Some of the things on structure might be, for goodness sake, have a timed agenda. Start on time, make sure you capture actions, and make sure you end on time. And avoid Zoom fatigue. Some of the logistics could be all around, make sure that equipment works in advance, make sure you've tested it, make sure there's good Wi-Fi. And have you got enough socket outlets for all the equipment? Some of the anticipating challenges is just know the workload on each person and have a co-host who can take over if the host link fails. And that happened to us in one of our meetings recently where my screen failed, but because we're a co-host, everything continued working and nobody really noticed. Now, there may be other things in there, and if you think there's other things that we've missed, tell us and we'll come back to that. One of the things we're looking at is more tutorial options. So that tutorial that Philip put together in a video clip, we could look at doing more, but really is, what do you need? So again, during this, stick it in the chat if there's things that you think that would be useful on tutorials, or we could even have drop-in sessions into the start of the new Rotary year on topics that you want. And really, let's have a discussion on what you think is good. We're going to put the recordings of this onto YouTube, and we'll put the recording that the video clip that we played, that will be on YouTube just after here. And a particular thanks again to the whole team for putting that together, to Philip, to Tony, to Stuart, and to Roger. And I'm going to stop sharing there. We're going to let you have your time, and in the reactions button, and it's either the bottom or top of your screen, depending on what you have, there's put your hand up. So either put your hand up and we'll pick you up. We've got 92 on, so there's no way we can see everybody. So don't wave at us, we can't see you. So in the reactions, put your hand up and we'll take any questions. And if they're difficult ones, I'll give them to Philip to do. Heather.
I thought I might pick up the ones that have already come into the chat. Would that be helpful?
That would be wonderful.
Okay, so do you want to take them one at a time, or will I just read them out?
One at a time, that's fine.
Okay, so Neil Wallace from Inverness was just had a query about how we might integrate a hearing loop, which seems to be a really good question, maybe one to take away and have a think about.
Philip, you've thought about the hearing loop?
I'm assuming if there's a hearing loop in a room, then it'll be part of the room amplification system. So whatever sound we put into the room system will go to the hearing loop. If that's not the case, I can't imagine quite how the hearing loop works, but in the church, there's already a mixer, for example, that just has the output going into the hearing loop. So I think it's covered in that sense. I don't I don't believe it's a hybrid issue as such. It's much more difficult if you have a small meeting or a medium meeting where you're not using the venue. And I know some hearing aids not only do the loop system, but they're actually Bluetooth enabled. I suspect that gets really hard to try and coordinate being Bluetooth connected to the system. Let's call that the major advanced setup for people to try by themselves.
Thanks, Philip. And the next question, Heather?
Yep. I think it was more of a comment from John at St Macher, just to put into the mix. I think I've got this right. A mirrorless DSLR will work on battery for about an hour, although that works best with a MacBook. So there's some kind of helpful suggestions coming in.
Yep.
Had a couple of queries about just people are really interested, Ken, so how to get the slides and the video. And I've basically said that the session's getting recorded and we'll also make the slides and the video available to everybody.
That's right. We'll put them on. Yep. We'll put the video clips on YouTube, the recording, and the slides we'll put on the district website.
Yep. And the last one I think was just, again, a practical question from Hilary about how the guides can be accessed, where things are going to be available for going and having a look and getting your own setup put in place.
So just say that one again, Heather.
How people are going to be able to access the guides that you were talking about, where they'll get the information, I think is the query. Is that right, Hilary?
The answer is we'll put them on the district website as well, anyway, Heather. Some of them are quite long, and the comment we've had is that they're maybe we could think of shortening them. But the amount of material that's out there on running hybrid meetings and Zoom meetings is phenomenal. And what we might do is just go through and pick up one or two key ones that we think are useful to put on as well, put links into it. So, and I don't believe there's no other questions. Come on, put up your hand.
I'll just make a comment, if I may. Can I make a comment, Ken?
Sure.
It was, you mentioned 40 megabits per second as the bandwidth required. I think Zoom says for group calls you need a minimum of 4, not 40. And I wondered whether we've got a decimal point in the wrong place. But that's dedicated. Remember that even if your venue has 40 megabits, there may be other people already using it. But it technically, according to Zoom, for a group call, it's 4 megabits, not 40. But that's one thing. The other thing was a practical tip is don't turn up at 5 to the hour for a meeting that starts at on the hour, because you need to give yourself time to just get the equipment set up. Particularly the first time, it's unfamiliar doing this, and practice. Just have a practice. Certainly what my club has decided to do, that when we can meet in person, we're going to set up a little practice, 2 or 3 in a venue and 2 or 3 online, and get it set up to give ourselves a practice so that we know what's going on. And I think that's the best way of taking the stress out of it, is to give yourself time and have a practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so people are aware, I was sitting working on this at 5:30 tonight for a 6:30 start. Just making sure everything was ready to go. And when I opened the Zoom meeting here at just before 6:15, again, so I could test some of the sharing, make sure it would work. I would come back on I agree that it's 4 megabit for Zoom meetings until you start sharing videos, then they become stuttery. So we do go up there. Stuart, Jeb.
Yeah, again, I was just going to make a comment backing up from what Phil said. But when we did the survey of the clubs and got information in about sound, sort of noise levels and Wi-Fi, we kind of said, well, the 2 key things for making this whole thing, this hybrid meetings a success, will be good Wi-Fi and good sound. And for both of those, we're probably dependent on the venues that the clubs are using. I need to look back and see just to what extent people were going to go back to using the venue they'd been using before all this COVID thing, or whether people were going to explore different venues. Perhaps if you had a meeting place where you had 25 to 30 people regularly, and on a hybrid meeting you were only going to have 10, let's say, in the room, you might be able to use a different venue. But I think that to some extent we need to understand our starting point, which will always be what's available in the venue in terms of Wi-Fi and in terms of good sort of sound quality, quiet place, and the ability to set it all up. So that's something that's not too technical, but it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, at the end of the day, go and ask your venue, and if they've not got something, ask them to upgrade it. So if they want you there, and they've then got the benefit for other groups joining you, so it's not just for you, ask a venue to upgrade it. Joe McDowell.
Thanks, Ken. First of all, thanks for an excellent presentation and very helpful. My question is that and this is probably to your development team, but to the wider group as well. As a club, we were looking to buy a new projector for what we would have seen in the past as the normal meetings. Now we would be thinking that if we're buying this new projector, we'd be asking ourselves the question, is there any type of projector that would be more suitable for a hybrid meeting? So if anyone knows the answer to that question, or can recommend some, or knows somebody that might be able to tell them, I would really appreciate some details maybe being sent to our club secretary. That'd be the easiest thing, Inverurie Club Secretary. So that's my question. We're really looking for a new projector. Are there projectors out there that pick up Wi-Fi instantly and, you know, might cut out some of the bits of equipment that you suggested we would need?
Yeah, it's a good point, and that could easily be looked at. The other thing is, ask your venue if they're prepared to put in a big screen TV. And that'll take that out of the equation altogether. And a lot of them have also got Bluetooth. I see Philip unmuting himself.
I was just going to say that the projector or the big screen TV will be connected with a cable, because there are very few systems that can allow you to connect the video over the Wi-Fi. It would be quite dodgy, I suspect, to try and do that. So it'll be an HDMI cable in both cases. I think the thing about a projector is some projectors do have a speaker built into them. I'm not sure how good they are. Most of the online videos I plagiarized in order to do the research kind of said, don't use them, just use a Bluetooth speaker like that boombox that we found. So again, it's experiment. I think from the projector point of view, it's about finding one that suits. If you have to carry it around, and it's going to have to be small. All of them these days are fairly bright. So it's the picture you're interested in first. Whether it can be the speaker as well, I'm not so sure.
Okay, thanks for that. And Andy Grayland's put a question in the box about, do we have approximate numbers in mind for small, medium and large? So we were thinking half a dozen round a table where they can all sit one side of the table for the very small one. And we would have thought up 20 to 40 for a middle size. And then the larger one is for larger meetings beyond that. One of the questions in there is a static camera might not be sufficient. You could use, if you're using a different camera, you could have somebody give that to the co-host to manage and point that at the speakers so they could pick it up. An auto tracking camera is a different league of cost altogether on that one, but they are available. An auto tracking camera that looks around the room.
And yes, in fact, in the presentation, I think we showed a camera tripod for that very purpose. We didn't highlight that at the time, but that's certainly one use of having a camera tripod, is to be able to have somebody in control of tracking. I think for typical business meetings and Rotary meetings, I suspect that's just going to be too much work. I mean, it'd be fine for something like a webinar or a district conference or something like that, where you've got a particular purpose, but for an everyday meeting, that might be hard. You can have multiple room cameras if you wish. That's no trouble. You can have many cameras as you like. They can't see each other, so they never interfere. However, it gets really hard for the remote participants. They really just want one to view the room and one to be the slides or the presenter. But if you really want, you can have as many cameras as you like. It gets really hard to have multiple microphones because every microphone can hear every speaker that's around. And that's why the mixer is important when you've got multiple microphones. So in that last picture, when Ken highlighted the connections from the mixer to the laptop, there is one connection from the mixer to the laptop and one connection from the laptop back to the mixer. So Zoom does all the echo cancellation from its own, the speakers it can hear. So that's the critical thing, is all the audio has to go through one connection. That's why there's a mixer.
And Neil from Inverness has put a question in about how will this integrate with a lunch meeting? Is it anticipated remote attendees would watch everyone eat? Well, you choose. I think I know what I would say if that was the case. Or would it be expected the virtual part is restricted to business? Really, it's up to the club to decide how they do that. What's really useful is use of the breakout rooms for discussions round about. So remote people can have a discussion with other people as well. But really, that's a club thought on there. So Heather, you put something in there. Is that in the guidance the group developed? What was that one about?
It was the question just above that, I think.
I think we've covered that one.
Yeah, and we have covered that one, I think. I think that was the question about the projector. I just wondered if that could be put in there in terms of the advice about the projector. There's a question of asking whether districts would be using hybrids for our meeting. Definitely. And Phil's just covered the question about why we need a mixer. I think if that's not been covered, whoever asked the question can come back. I think that was Douglas at West Fife. A question about using V-monitor sound instead of a speaker.
That sounds feasible. Yeah. Philip, what do you think? Would you use a monitor for the sound?
The rules are one connection in and one connection out. So if the TV is the speaker, then that's fine. And it doesn't matter whether the TV is the speaker or your Bluetooth is a speaker, that's fine. Having two of them would be possible, but it starts to get awkward. If you've got some wired and some not wired, they're going to be different latencies, and that causes the audio to be out of sync, and it will probably be worse than trying to have one bigger box that is louder. So that's why in the big meetings, or when you've got a room system, that's the one to use, and it's just into the room amplifier. Trying to get around it by having multiple equipments is hard. Don't try and have laptops on every table, all playing sound. That's just going to cause trouble. Even if you manage to persuade everybody to disconnect their audio so that they didn't get feedback, somebody will forget. And all of a sudden in the middle of the meeting, everybody will be deafened by the howl of feedback. So we don't want to do that. That wouldn't work. Sure, there was something.
Thanks. Oh, yes. I think I was just thinking. In fact, John from St Macha put in a comment as well, which I didn't see until after I asked the question. Also thinking that when we share the video, we should cut in a box with John from St Macha, who's doing all these kind of faces of horror about laptops on every table. And yep, that's absolutely right about the TV. It's fantastic. It's like a running commentary. Obviously, somebody else who's really on top of these issues. Roger Diggins from Burnt Islands and Kinghorn put in a really helpful comment, which he sent to me, and I've put in, and he's put in about how it might work in terms of lunchtime, and we covered that off. Question about lighting levels at venues. Any advice or thoughts about that?
I think some of the smart cameras and the cameras on your laptop pick up most of the light. The biggest thing is not having light behind you, because you just then become a silhouette. But I think we've all found that over the last year and a bit running Zoom, haven't we?
Oddly enough, I would say having the camera in the room is going to give you a slightly better picture. When we're sitting one-to-one with a laptop or a monitor, you're sitting in front of a device that happens to output a lot of blue light. And so everybody kind of looks a bit washed out. And if you've got control over your white balance, you can try and correct it. But in the room, face-to-face people will actually possibly have a slightly better color balance. So that will be could be better. Generally, don't sit in the dark. And I guess the trouble there will be if you have a weak projector, so that you're dimming the light so that you can see a presentation. But if you're doing that, maybe people don't need to see the room view anyway. So hopefully it will work out. But so there could be issues, but generally I think it will be okay.
And then Michelle's put in there, one of the possible ways to run hybrid meetings is via YouTube Live. Sorry, Michelle, we've not looked at that one.
Well, I can comment on it. Because when I was doing some of the research, I did look into it, and it's actually perfectly feasible to have the output from Zoom go into a free piece of software called OBS Studio, which is open broadcast software, and that can broadcast into YouTube Live as you go. I think for a hybrid meeting, it's not ideal because it's a one-way, you're just watching. There's no back channel. I think for a hybrid meeting, you really want it to be both ways. We said at the front, it's in-room participants can see and hear the remote participants, and the remote participants can see and hear the in-room participants. I think doing the live streaming is more like a webinar.
Yeah. So thanks for that. And then Andy Grayland's put in from Forth Bridges. He might think of using the Jabra Panacast over a mirrorless DSLR. It's about £100 cheaper, got 180-degree field of view, and that's better for participant engagement when you're tracking 16 or more. Or that. Do you want to pass more comment on that, Andy?
Yeah, so I used to run the Ministry of Defence's remote video conferences, and we had very large rooms and remote participants. We've been doing that for about the last 10 years or so. Over about 16 in-room participants, a static camera, you kind of lose the people who are remote, and it feels more like a presentation to them than they're actually at the meeting. Obviously, we have to work with what we can afford and what we can make work. But I would suggest if you're going to have more than 16 in-room participants, then you probably want to have it as a non-remote meeting.
Yeah, and I guess as well, if there's multiple tables in the room as well as some of the bigger meetings, managing that.
Yeah, so the solution for the bigger meetings is auto-tracking cameras, but they're super expensive.
Yeah, define super expensive.
For good ones, about £1,500.
Yeah, so just so people are aware of what it is, and a good idea it was, but you're more up to date than me on that.
Yeah, I mean, I should preface that one of our goals was to make this almost free to start, and that we're not counting the cost of the laptop or the cost of the smartphones because we assume that people have those, and you can get going with those. I think the first thing you would really want to buy is that cheap microphone, that you could put that on a stand somewhere in the room so you can pick that up. And £15 microphone will make a big difference. Microphones in laptops or on phones just don't really cut the mustard, but a cheap microphone will get you going. And that's probably the minimum spend I would recommend. And then just try it and get familiar with it. And once you've practiced, expand out, much like Ken's diagrams, add to it as you need. Don't go in and think, I've got to have all the bells and the whistles to start with. It'll be overwhelming. You've kind of got to, the technology is not the purpose. The technology is facilitating the meeting. The meeting is the purpose. And we've talked a lot about thinking of it as a Rotary meeting or a business meeting, but it could equally well be, as we said right up front, it could be two clubs. In my club, we've had meetings with clubs in the USA, in the Rich Mar Club or the Twin Cities. We've got one coming up with Nepal. They're brilliant. The trouble is not the technology. The trouble is actually the time difference, trying to get everybody on at the right time. So you can do that. And there'll be lots of opportunities, not only for bingo, but you can run quizzes. If you're a club that run a quiz and you had maybe 80 people in a venue before, even when you can get down to level 0, you're probably going to have limited numbers in your venue. And maybe the economics don't work. So if you maybe half the number, so you're down to 40, sell some tickets online, run it as a hybrid meeting. You can reach out. You can have tickets at different price if you don't think they're as valuable online. We need to kind of get used to the technology and then think out of the box and just try things. There's no right or wrong. If it doesn't work, do something different the next time.
And I think that's an extremely important point here. This is to support your meeting. It's not to run the meeting. And we were challenged to say, how cheap can you make this and make it work? And hopefully we've done that. Ian Grovewhite.
Sorry, the role of the co-host seems to be absolutely key to the success of this scheme. I think we need to have some special training for that.
That's something we could easily do. I thoroughly recommend the co-host. So even tonight, Heather's kindly agreed to be the co-host and running that questions in the background and picking up the chat. And actually when we were starting, she was admitting people. And when we were running the district conference, we had 3 co-hosts as well as the host. So, and it was a high workload. Just making sure the next video was ready, the next presentation was ready to put up. So we didn't rely on, in the conference, we didn't rely on the presenters sharing. We actually had their presentation, we put it up for them. And that way we were in control and we knew we had the material if their link failed, for example. So yeah, co-host, it's not difficult, it's pretty easy. It took me nearly half a second to make Heather co-host this evening. So, Jim Hull.
Unmuted, sorry. How many co-hosts can you have, and do they all need to be professional status in the Zoom?
It's useful to know how to use Zoom. It depends what task you give them to do, Jim. I don't think there's a limit on the number of co-hosts. I've seen 10 in some of the Britain and Ireland meetings, and in some of the Rotary International meetings, I've seen 10 co-hosts. So there's plenty scope for that. The maximum I've had is 4, and that works fine.
The co-hosts do not need their own account.
No, they can't.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. What other questions have we got? Still got 10 minutes for anybody that's got any more. I can't believe we've answered all the questions. So, Davey.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, can I just come in the back of Michelle from Elgin there, talked about the YouTube live stream.
Yep.
And I assume forgive me if I'm being ignorant here, but I assume we're talking about clubs, some club members going back to meet face-to-face round the table, and then you've got the other club members coming in remotely.
Yes.
Okay, well, our club is taking the decision that we are going to continue with our Zoom meetings until such time as we can all return to face-to-face.
Okay.
And I think that's where Michelle was coming with the live stream.
Okay.
Once we get back to our face-to-face meetings, then we're going to explore the live stream. So those who are not able to make it that particular day, can get in front of a screen somewhere, they can tune in, on the live stream and see the meeting live. Okay. I'm assuming that many clubs are anticipating returning with small numbers and then lots of other people just zooming in. Yeah. Is that the way I'm...
That's what we're reading, certainly, Davey. I'm going to ask Michelle if that was her thought.
Yes, it is, because we've agreed that it's only fair that we only invite everybody back when everybody has the opportunity to come back. Okay. And being such a big club, we're obviously way down the pecking line before that's going to happen. Sure. But we've taken advice from someone who runs live YouTube sessions at the moment. And take on board what Phil said about it being a one-way thing, but I know there is an app that you can get where you can have that chat function with them. Okay. Because this is, but it was just really to see whether the group that investigated it had looked into the live YouTube side of it, as well as just doing it all by the way that it's been communicated this evening.
Yeah, and that's by, if you remember, survey we put up. Some people are using different systems, and there are many out there for sure. Stuart, your £2 fine again, Stuart.
That's a private joke. I want to ask Michelle, because I know Elgin is one of the bigger clubs. What sort of percentage of your members are you getting on Zoom on a regular basis over the past year? Are you getting a good turnout?
So we're getting an average between 45 and 50 members a week.
Right. So that's excellent. So our own experience is both Ken and I are members of Forres, as you know. We're struggling, and especially recently, to get the numbers up, and we know there's a sort of a rump of people who are saying, well, we're just waiting until we can meet face to face again. So we're very keen, I think, to get the hybrid meetings going, just to get those people back involved. And I can't recall now if I put a question like that in the survey as to what percentage of people were attending Zoom meetings in clubs over the past year, but I'll look back and see if I did ask that.
I seem to think you did, actually, because it was myself that answered it for Elgin, so I seem to think you did ask that question, which, well, we have got a handful of people that haven't come because it's Zoom, but we've also been very fortunate that we've got a lot of Zoom followers. Good.
Okay, thanks.
So somebody's put a question in, how to upload a video to YouTube. That's going to be the subject of a separate session, I think. It's not that difficult. You just need your own channel, and we're just in the process of setting up a district channel. So all the YouTubes that we've been doing just now have been on my own channel at the moment. Jim Hull.
I'm talking about recording in a complex hybrid situation. Are there any complexities to the recording when you've got the multiple computers and phones?
It shouldn't be, don't think. Shouldn't make any difference.
So it'd be all recorded on the main host speaker?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are actually two options when you're the host. You can record on the local computer, and that will record the view you're seeing usually. But you can also in Zoom ask it to record in the cloud, and the account holder can set up what it records. That can be the gallery view, the spotlight view, the speaker view, or all of them. So from the Zoom point of view, there's nothing special to do.
Okay, that's good. One thing I've seen in Ken's pictures before is that when you've got a speaker, sometimes you've had another additional speaker along with you in the same screen, and that doesn't seem to figure in. How is that achieved? If you've got a speaker and somebody that's also in the conversation, you've got both people on the screen. It's not just a speaker, it's two people. How is that achieved?
Spotlight multiple people, Ken.
Yeah, so Heather's just gone and spotlighted me so you could actually see who's speaking, and she's spotlighted herself. So you could actually just have that, and people, rather than just look at 90 faces or something, we can actually see who's speaking at any time, and that's available in Zoom.
Spotlight, okay, thank you.
So you just click on the person and you get an option to spotlight them. And right. You can spotlight me now. There you go. So that's unless anybody's got any other question, I'm just trying to see if there's anything else in the chat. But yeah, one thing on recording to the cloud, to the Zoom cloud, is they've got a 1 GB limit, and then you start paying. And a 1 hour recording is just about 1 GB. So I've exceeded mine a couple of times when I was recording to the cloud. So I record all mine to my own computer, and then I can edit it and do what I want. So final question from Joe McDowell.
You know, as meetings go on, I always get more and more confused. But it's a simple question. My understanding was that we wouldn't return to anything different from what we're doing just now until district gave us guidance. So I didn't realise clubs would be free to go back face to face without some indication from district.
Yeah, absolutely right. There you go.
Thanks.
So that's 26 minutes past. That's our hour gone. Thank you all very much. Before I finish, Alistair Robb wants a couple of minutes. Alistair.
Thanks very much, Ken, and good evening, everyone. Well over a year ago now, DG and Ken suggested that there may be people out there whose clubs were not meeting, and that maybe we could give them an alternative club online for an hour each week. A chance to chat with other Rotarians, to hear from some speakers, and just stay updated with what was going on in Rotary. And this was agreed not only for District 1010, but was also taken on by the other Scottish districts too. And Ken has stuck to the task admirably and has almost without exception run and hosted our forum every single week for, I think now 57 weeks, although I may be corrected on that, but I think it's 57 weeks. So could you all join me in thanking Ken in the usual way for the work and the dedication he's given to the forum over the last year? Thank you very much, Ken.
Goodness, you know how to embarrass me, don't you? So thanks everybody. It's been an absolute delight doing these. Just before we finish on this, you can see there's a huge amount of permutations. There's lots of different options. As Philip says, give it a try. And a particular thanks to the team again, to Roger, to Philip, to Stuart, to Tony, for helping to put this together. And we'll be back next year. If you have ideas for topics for maybe once a month, let us know what they are and we will accommodate them. So thanks very much, everybody, and a safe journey back to your sofas.
Well done, Ken.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Night all. Night.
Well done, Ken. Thank you.
Well done, Ken.
Thanks, Ken. Good night.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Bye.